Welcome to Mike Happens, a podcast that brings you inspiring, funny, and authentic stories about resilience, life's unexpected journeys, and the incredible strength of the human spirit. My name's Jay Connor Riley, your host, and as a voiceover artist who's also navigating life with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, I've learned firsthand that life's toughest moments often make the best stories. All right, welcome back for another episode, you guys. We did it. We're on another episode. We're at episode 5 now. Last episode, we jumped into traveling, but episode 5, we're actually going to kind of go back a little bit. Episode 3, I explained don't call last run, why you don't call last run, and this is a follow-up to the whole ski injury. And I got the surgery, so we're gonna jump into that. Fast forward to now, I finally got cut open. We're patched up. We got a new shoulder, and I'm about 3 weeks to a month from my surgery at the time of this recording. So yeah, we're back recording Mike Happens with me, Jay Connor Riley. So we will talk about obviously the surgery. A little bit of the post-op, how I've been kind of surviving, my battles and stuff that I've been dealing with, and maybe a couple funny things that happened along the way. So let's jump into episode 5, you guys. I'm stoked. I can't believe we're making it happen. So we're post-op. We made it through the surgery. We finally got it done. It did get delayed, as I've mentioned before. But yeah, let's get into the day of surgery and kind of, my thoughts leading up to it. And kind of the initial reaction I had with surgery. Leading into surgery, I felt pretty confident. I don't really get too nervous over surgeries. And I think my biggest thing was it was a new surgeon for me. And it was also the shoulder. So there's a lot going on with the shoulder. And, my concerns of my Ehlers-Danlos syndrome as well. So that can come into play a lot, especially the more connective tissues you have going, the more issues you can have with the tissues. So we didn't want that to happen. And thankfully, shouts out to my doctor. He is great, and he super smart person, very knowledgeable of my condition, and has been really helpful. So that made me feel pretty confident going into the surgery. That being said, still kind of, new surgeon, slightly nervous about that, I guess. And then the fact that it's the shoulder, a lot happening. Things can go wrong with the shoulder, so I really didn't want that to happen. So one of the interesting things about the prep, though, I thought was, obviously you can't eat before X amount of time, and, which I was always like, is it just before you eat, really? I know it's always before midnight, you gotta eat, but I've had surgery where it's 9 a.m. or 1 p.m. and it's still, you can't eat after midnight. So I'm assuming it's because of the sleep aspect. But anyways, part of the prep that was weird to me was they gave me, well, they didn't give it to me, I had to buy it, but I had to use a special soap that the surgery center made me use, and it was pretty expensive for what it was, to be honest, but a little harsh. I wouldn't recommend it for day-to-day use, but yeah, I understand the extra precaution with that stuff, so it's totally fine. I don't mind doing that. My last thing I ate was a Reese's, so that was fantastic. A little candy treat before I went to bed. Well, before midnight, So after I do my whole prep situation for the surgery and kind of get ready, day of, I'm feeling pretty good. I had a bit of a long drive. That's the downfall of looking for a specific surgeon. You might have to drive a little bit. And that's what ended up happening. Day of, we get there. People were really nice. The nurses, the whole crew, the whole team, whole medical staff. Shouts out to you guys. You guys were really kind to me. And before surgery was very smooth. Everyone was really kind. Not that I've, ever really had a bad experience in a surgery center. I feel like, and I could be wrong, but I feel like a lot of the nurses and doctors and people that kind of work in just kind of surgery centers, I feel like they're maybe I don't know, I don't know, they just seem less stressed. And I know it's not like, it's probably not like an ER situation, right? But it was a better vibe. But it was a great time in terms of that. My only qualm with them, I'm a little upset, and I've talked about it on some social media videos, but I got a sling, right? The sling is kind of, it's pretty top notch. It's got all the bells and whistles on here, but so it came with a medicine ball, and I was like, this is sick. I love this. I'm like, I was pointing out, I was like, oh, look at this. It's got a medicine ball. Can't believe it. I wake up, it's gone. And I get home, I'm like, oh no, they took my medicine ball. So if anyone's listening that was in my surgery center, I would love to have my medicine ball back. But it's okay if not, either way. I appreciate you guys, and thank you guys so much for taking care of me. And I am on the road to recovery with surgery, and this is, it's been a long time in the making, so I'm really excited. So I get all set up. I get I'm in the room getting ready for the surgery, and I end up getting a nerve block, which I've done before. For some reason, I don't know why, but I thought for some reason the shoulder be able to get a nerve block. I've done it in my leg before, so I was like, oh, that makes sense. But I don't know. For some reason, I'm like, they're not going to give me the nerve block. Thankfully, they did. And it helps a lot with the pain. But one of the weird things before I went under, I didn't really care at that point because, they gave me some things to calm down at that point before I was going under. And I guess my whole left side twitched and kind of jolted, and I'm like, I don't remember that, but I guess that did happen. My partner said so. Glad I don't really remember that part. I'm glad I was kind of not caring at that point, because it was a giant needle going into your neck, and it was a bit intense. Thankfully, I didn't really care at that point. So wake up, surgery pretty smoothly, pretty fine with waking up. Nerve block, like I said, doing its thing, which is really helpful. Again, I live pretty far away, so that was helpful. It was still a pretty uncomfortable day, I would say. I think just anyone that kind of goes through surgery can also relate. That's just part of, just your body goes through a lot. So, and so the unfortunate part, the nerve block didn't last as long as they said, and it did wear off pretty quickly into the night. So that was a bit much, and I kind of fell behind on my pain and everything. So that was a bit much, and just, sleeping, sitting up is just so difficult. It's torture at some point. But I've been making it happen, and I've gotten really good at basically, I feel like I'm leaning up against a tree. That's really the feeling is I got my cowboy hat on, leaning up against a tree with a little piece of hay in my mouth, and yeah, I'm sleeping like that. We're getting there, we're sleeping more, and we're doing more things. We're back in the booth, which is amazing. I really love voiceover for that aspect. It's not a physically demanding job, so to say. I can still get in the booth, do things with my shoulder. Again, you do get a little bit animated sometimes with your body, and you do need to use your body in terms of when you're doing your voiceover, right? Just like you're normally talking. But for the most part, it's not like I need, to carry 25 pounds of X, Y, and Z and, have this minimum of carrying. No, I go in the booth, I do the thing, I'm here. So that is one of the awesome victories that I've had during this time. So. Speaking of victories, during these times, you really got to appreciate the small wins, because, you're looking at it on a smaller scale. It's easier to see what you've accomplished and what you've done on a day-to-day basis, opposed to being wow, I'm still hurting, still in a sling, still this. And, trying to look at the things that I've accomplished on the smaller scale has been really helpful. And that's something that I always try to do when I go into surgery, is just keep that mindset of just being okay, I'm doing this today. I got my socks on today. I was able to do this today. I was, X, Y, and Z. So those are the things that I try to look out for in these times when I'm having a difficult time. Another awesome victory that I had during this time, and again, the great thing about voiceover is you can still not only work a lot of the times when out of commission like this, but also I was able to network and do things in that nature, like do a lot of computer work, and I was able to sign with a couple more agents, which is super awesome. Not only that, I've been networking with some amazing brands and other people that would want to use my voiceover work. So like I've mentioned many times, and I feel like a big theme of this podcast that I've mentioned is adapting and overcoming. So, right now I'm doing things a little differently than I was, before I got surgery and before, I guess, even having to need surgery. And that's okay. And honestly, times like those, I feel like you figure out first off, you really learn from yourself what you're capable of, which is really amazing. And also you can find things that like you might not have figured out without being tested like that. So I do appreciate those times like this where, it is difficult. Don't get me wrong, but it also makes me stronger, and it makes me have the ability to keep going, and it makes it so in the difficult times, it gets easier, especially as you've been through things more, and you learn how to adapt, you learn how to work through things, you figure out coping mechanisms or whatever you might need to get you through, and then you come out on top and you can see what you've done. And I think a big thing that people forget is, especially again in these times, but just in life in general, you don't always got to look forward, but also see what you've accomplished, see how far you've come. The checklist of life that you've done. So give yourself that grace and give yourself that time, and you will adapt. You will overcome. You'll make it happen. Just gotta believe in yourself. And if anyone's gonna believe in you, it needs to be yourself, and then others will follow and have the confidence in you and believe in you, just like you should believe in yourself. That being said, doesn't mean that I haven't had my difficulties with this recovery and everything, and just this whole situation has been a bit much. I've realized that one thing, and I always realize with surgeries and stuff, you can't hustle your way through recovery. You can certainly set yourself up for success and make sure that you're doing the things and doing PT at home and just listening to your doctor. As much as I want to be 100%, I know that it is still a bit of a road to being fully recovered with my shoulder, and that's cool. That's fine. But yeah, that is something that I've realized that, and it's not going to be like linear. It's you're going to have good days, bad days, frustrating days, stuff like that. So that's something I've learned during this whole recovery process is give yourself a little bit of grace, and as long as you're doing what your medical team is telling you to do, then don't give yourself too much problems. Just give yourself a little bit of grace and take those small wins, take the victories. You moved your arm a couple more inches than the day before. You got in the booth, stuff like that. I got in the booth. So like those are things that you gotta take, and that's yours. You know what I'm saying? Those are your victories. Those are your people's. Those are everyone that supported you. Those are your victories. Take those. Those are yours. So you earned them. And like I said, small victories are still victories. And then it piles up into a big victory. All right, let's go. You need to be patient with yourself. And you need to realize that being patient isn't a passive thing that you do. It is still active work at the end of the day. So give yourself that bit of grace when you are going through these situations. Like with anything, I always say, you got to try to find the humor in things, and appreciate that during these difficult times. And, I've mentioned in other podcast episodes about, just you gotta appreciate and laugh. You gotta laugh at things, and you gotta just, don't take things so seriously. We're all here one time. And yes, there are times where you need to be serious, get your things done, and don't be a class clown. But at the end of the day, we're here one time, and have a good time. Don't be mean to people. But anyways, let's have a little funny, a little humor, something that happened. And for people that listened to my third episode about ski accident and everything, I had a little bit of a deja vu moment here. And as for the people that haven't listened to that episode, I am left-handed, and I ran into a situation. Pretty recently in my life, I discovered left-handed scissors. Great thing for a left-handed person, let me tell you. They don't come in handy when your left hand doesn't work. So, this happened to me a few months back, but recently, after post-op, I go into the junk drawer, and we have both lefty and righty scissors in there. Not this time. Again, it happened again. The lefty scissors were the only scissors in there, and I'm trying to use them with my right hand. Because my left shoulder is the one that's messed up. So I couldn't help but laugh. I'm like, you kidding me? This happened again? And I think it's funny. The universe, it works in mysterious ways, and you gotta laugh at it. Even like mentioning the medicine ball thing, and that was a good laugh that I had at my doctor's office. Was like, dude, like they stole a medicine ball, So I feel like that was a good laugh, and you gotta give yourself a little bit of grace during these difficult times. Another positive to all this, and a silver lining, I would say, with this situation is my cat. I have a bit of a skittish cat, and it took me years to get to where I am right now. And we're at a point where she will cuddle up on me, and it's amazing. It took me so long for her to just come hang out with me and sit down, and again, she was very skittish. Sweetest cat in the world, though, I must say. She is adorable and so nice, never attacks you or anything, and, is very playful, and just a sweet cat. Doesn't want you to pick her up, doesn't want you to look at her, sit down and look the other way and pet her is kind of like what she does. But now she comes up to me, she hangs out with me, and that's so awesome. And a part of it is because I was on a couch for so long, just kind of sitting there and just recovering from, the original accident to post-op and stuff. So it's just been great, and we've built a connection, and that is just one of the silver linings to this whole situation is I have grown closer to my very skittish, adorable, cute little cat. And the funny thing is, I said the silver lining, and she's gray, so, maybe the gray lining, I think. I do want to express some gratitude, too, to the people closest in my life, particularly my partner. She has been a warrior, and I cannot thank her enough for everything she's done. And, shout out to my family as well and other people that has helped me through this. And, I couldn't do without you guys. So I do really appreciate all the support, and I am so thankful to have awesome people in my corner rooting for me. And also, not only that, being able to find a medical staff that I trust and am confident in. I feel like that's such a tough subject and tough thing nowadays to find a quality doctor in some team that you trust in. So I do have a lot of gratitude for that, and I can't express enough thank you to everyone that has helped me through this very difficult time. And it's only up from here, you know what I'm saying? So we're going to keep going day at a time, and we're going to keep taking the small victories, and they're going to be big victories from there. So let's go. As for some kind of takeaways from this episode, and I guess some takeaways in general that I've had during this whole process, is one, you can't rush healing. And that doesn't matter if it's physical, emotional, you can't rush it. You need to do whatever you need to do to fully heal to get where you need to be. Number 2, don't be stubborn. And you need to lean on people, and you need to get help when you need it. You know, there are times when we all need someone to lean on, you know. Lean on me when you're not strong. All right, you know, I'm not a singer. I do voiceover, okay? So just give me a little grace there. But yeah, don't be stubborn. I've been stubborn, and I also just have this feeling of guilt, I guess, in terms of putting too much on people. But you know, there's times when you do need a little bit extra help more than the average person, and you just got to give yourself a little bit of grace. And as long as that person's okay with helping you out, then don't feel bad about it. But you know, just keep working at getting better, and remember the people that have helped you out along the way. If there's a time comes when they're going to need a little bit of help, be there for them, okay? Those are the people that you need to look out for. And, you know, the people that have your back in these scenarios are going to be the people that they're going to be there through everything. So don't forget that in times like these. Another takeaway from this episode: celebrate the tiny wins. Take those tiny wins. Take them. You know, it's a small progress. As much as I want to just be using my shoulder and my arm, it's still immobilized. It's still in the thing. I'm still winning. I'm still doing things. Stuff is happening with my shoulder. I'm taking the small victories. So don't forget that in these times. They amount to big victories. Take those wins. So not only staying positive, but humor. You gotta lean into your humor. You gotta laugh. You gotta enjoy it. You know, you gotta find the humor during the dark times. And again, there's a time to be serious. There's a time to get your stuff done. If you need a little bit of humor, a little something to laugh at, lean into that. You know, you deserve it. You're going through something difficult. Yeah, that's what I've learned during post-op, some things that I've kind of taken away. And I appreciate anyone who listens to this podcast. And, you know, I really appreciate, again, everyone that has helped me through this very difficult time. And I'm excited. Your boy's going to have a new shoulder soon enough. And who knows, maybe I'll make a comeback. I always joke I'm going to make a comeback in a pitching career. I used to play baseball way back when. Who knows? I don't know if anyone watched the Disney movie, The Rookie, but hey, I might make the move. I might make a comeback. I might be at some point in my 30s being on the mound, throwing for like a third of an inning. So who knows? But yeah, we're here. We're alive. I am appreciative of everyone, and I'm appreciative of my team. And thank you again. We are going to wrap it up here. And yeah, thank you guys again if you guys made it this far and listening to this podcast. And, you know, hopefully I'll actually be throwing something. You know, I was joking, but I would actually like to get to that point. I saw in my PT protocol, I'm going to get to that point at some point in the future. I forget what date, but hey, maybe we'll talk about it then. Yes, exciting things to come. I know I've mentioned bringing on guests in the past. I am very much looking into that and talking to people to bring on. Again, a little bit of a hiccup with the whole shoulder thing. So if you're listening and I've talked to you about coming on the podcast, I appreciate your patience, and we will be in touch soon. And until then, if you guys want to reach out and join the podcast, if you have anything inspiring, cool, you got a cool brand, you want to come have a conversation, let's talk about it and come on the podcast. All right, Mike Happens with Jay Connor Riley. I'm out. Well, that about wraps it up. Thanks for tuning in to Mike Happens podcast. If you like what you heard, subscribe on Spotify and available on my website voiceswithjay.com and other streaming services. Join me each episode as we explore the beautiful, hilarious, and inspiring ways life shapes our stories. Until next time, remember, every story matters, especially yours.